What's up? I'd like to say we back, but I'm back, mic'd up. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. I've been busting out these top 100 individual videos, and I know you've been tuning into a bunch of them while you've been on vacation, doing whatever you've been doing throughout the country. So I figured we'd bring you in here so I could hear your thoughts on the list, and for people who tune in, we might get a little 100 through 80 on a list of your own, so we can kind of get a different perspective in here for the people. So
Yeah, all I'm saying for the videos that you're doing, you should call it mic up, not mic'd up. You don't want to confuse people that are looking for the actual mic'd up, just so you know. And it's only one mic, so. But no, let's get into it.
So first things first, Mike. I mean, let's just keep it to, we'll say, these first five guys, like Tyler Lockett through Brandon Scherf. What were kind of your general thoughts on those first five that I had there?
I think a good group of them aren't on my top 100 list. So I think all good players. I think they were right in the discussion. I think if they weren't in the top 100, they were probably in the 105, 110 range. So it's really, I think this is really nitpicky area because they're all good players, all really strong at what they do. So I think you went maybe less splash, maybe just more. If you just put on the film production, they're there. They're the reason they make plays. They maybe all three of these players, I think, make a lot of plays that maybe they don't get on the stat sheet. And I think that's maybe something when you do film review like you have been for this top 100 list. I think a lot of these players show up a little bit more than they do on the stat sheet. I think that's shows to the amount of work you're putting in. But I think that 99 to 97, I think they're right outside my top 100. I think Sheriff for the guard position, I think he's a top end talent. I think you need to put some offensive linemen. They don't get too much love, and no foreshadowing, but I think Tyler Lockett at 100 makes a ton of sense.
No, I agree about the offensive lineman point. I looked back at the NFL's list from this past season, and they had one lineman prior to pick 51. And I believe on my list, I have like eight of them. So, I just don't think that we're skewing this towards playmakers or kind of discriminating against any position. So even though I know some offensive lineman videos might not be the most viewed, maybe that's what the NFL Network's going for, just some clicks. But no, there's definitely going to be a bunch of linemen on my list. But to what you said about these guys being tightly grouped, you can't really emphasize that enough, because like there's guys who one day you look at them and it's like, okay, that guy's a 105, and then as you kind of put on the film and really get to the nitty gritty of it, you can kind of argue them all the way up, maybe 15 spots sometimes. So just because somebody's 96, don't think that, he should have been 86. That's way too low, because honestly, like, all these guys are so tightly packed, especially when you're comparing guys out of position. Like, it's such a kind of subjective thing to compare, okay, this defensive back to this tight end or something. So I definitely agree with you there. I have a lot of these guys that we're going to find on your list that you had 100 to 90. I had right outside mine. So what do you kind of think about that next group from, I guess, Everson Griffin to Kenny Galladay?
I'm just going to start right at 94. What a homer. What a homer. Oh, my gosh. Oh, I can't believe it. What? He's not even in the top 110. I can't believe you, Mike. I'm just kidding. He's a good player. He doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but 94 is it's too early for him. I know you probably watched a lot of Lions film. Maybe you were just watching some Kenny film and Trey caught your eyes. I don't know what happened, but that has to be it for me. But Everson Griffin was an interesting one. Me and you looked at the top 100 or putting together our list. He wasn't even on our 190. What do we have? 180, 190 board because he's not on a team. So it's kind of an interesting evaluation. I think a lot of how he's going to perform this next year is going to be dependent on what situation he gets put in. I think that's a whole lot. You put him on a team that already has some solid interior D lineman or has another D end, a really solid bookend, then I think Everson Griffin here, this might even be too low for him if you put him in that kind of position. But if he ends up on a team like the Jags or something like that, then it's probably too high for him. That's kind of how I feel with Everson Griffin. Deion Jones, that's an interesting case. If he could stay healthy on the field, I don't think there's any denying 93 is it might be too low for him, because man, when he's playing on the field, he's everywhere. He basically has the athleticism of safety with the size and strength of a linebacker. Like he's fun to watch. So I think that's an interesting pick. I think the next three I agree with. I think they're right in the right spots. I think Kevin Byard you would say it, or Bayard as a Titans fan would say it. Uh, don't confuse it for Byrat. But I think they're all three really good players right there. I think Josh Jacobs, obviously more – Josh Jacobs and Kenny Galladay, more up and coming. I think they still – I don't think they've hit their ceiling. Why I think with Kevin, I think you know what you're getting from him. And I think he's just consistent. I think that's what – you made that prevalent in your video. He's consistent with what he does. I think he's basically hit his ceiling. I think we know what we're getting out of him. So I think that's kind of an interesting three you got right there.
Oh, and kind of to recap those, that Trey Flowers pick, I'll be honest, it did come out of nowhere. Because I don't even think when I made my initial 196, I don't think he was even 120. But it was really once I dug into the stats and compared him to say Everson Griffin that I realized okay, on 150 less snaps, Trey Flowers had 8 more QB pressures. And when you consider the situation that he had around him, I think it's hard pressed to even compare the situations because there's a big difference from having Romeo Okwara opposed to Danielle Hunter, for example. And I agree with you with Deion Jones when he's healthy, and especially when he has people around him. That's when he's at his best. One guy commented the other day, and I hope that Marlon Davidson is kind of able to fill that role that Dontari Poe left to help keep him clean, because that is when he's at his best, when he's able to just roam. And he's absolutely right. I completely agree with that. And then Kevin Byard, I don't know why so many Titans fans are getting offended. I mean, I had 7 people. I'm not going to lie. I just deleted the comments because I know how you can say his name. I've just been saying it Byard for 4 years. So you guys got to pump the brakes on that. If Kevin watches the video, I'm sure I'll apologize. Don't worry. But no, I think that he's just been, as you said, the model of consistency in the league. I don't know if he's peaked necessarily because he only is 26 years old. I know it feels like he's older than that. But these last 3 years, for example, he's had – I want to say it was 84, 87, and 90 tackles. And then he's had 18 interceptions total between the last 3 years. So it's you already know you're getting 87 tackles and 6 INTs on average. So I think that – I know one commenter, he thought that Byard was a little bit too low. I think that
Byard.
It's
Byard.
It's Byard here. So I think that you can argue him over some of the safeties that we're going to have up next. But the problem is, what am I supposed to do with a guy like Devin McCourty or Earl Thomas when I'm not really projecting towards the future? How am I supposed to assume that they're going to regress and Byard should be put above them? It's kind of an interesting discussion to be had. And then with Josh Jacobs and Kenny Galladay, obviously they are third and first year players respectively, but I think that just what you've seen from them with the talent surrounding them, they have solidified a spot on this list already, and I'm just excited to see where they're able to climb to, because I know a couple commenters, they thought Josh Jacobs was low, but when you consider he's only been in the league for 1 year and behind a really good offensive line, I'll give him a ton of credit considering he was really that offense's driving force. But I can't give him too much credit, So that's why I think 92 was the perfect spot for him. But other than that, do you want to move on to that kind of next group of 5?
Let's move on. So, some of my initial thoughts. Mike, are you not subscribed to PFF? Seriously, these players should be in your top 50. I don't know what you're doing. You should really get off. You should stop the YouTube channel. I'm just
50,
messing with you.
Top 50. Chris Godwin should be top 15. What do you mean top 50? What are you talking about, Mike?
I'm just saying in general, but with that whole group of players, I think they're probably a bunch. I think Jalen Smith probably shows up well on PFF. Delvin Cook probably definitely does when he's playing. Zach Ertz, it seems he's always up there. Leonard Fournette, probably not. I think you probably have him too high compared to what PFF might have him. And I think – and I'm actually with you. I'm just messing. PFF only looks at things from a stat standpoint, just what you could see on a piece of paper or through a computer, and that's not how football is. You have to watch the film, watch the games. So many plays are made that wouldn't show up on the stat sheet, and I think that's where you kind of got it here. I think they're in perfect spots, especially Chris Godwin. He's not going up against cornerback ones. He's not. He's just simply not. He has Mike Evans. You have to take that into consideration when arguing his stats. And how much of it could be the Juju effect? And it's such a similar situation. You really can't deny it. That's why maybe I should just kind of sell you out. I don't think either of us have Juju on our list. If you would have done this 2 years ago, he'd have been in people's top 60, probably top 50 on their list. And we're just being realistic. And I think that's how you have to look at this. I think all these players make a lot of sense here. I think The one is interesting. Leonard Fournette, I think, is an interesting one you have there. I do understand where you have it, just talent based and off where the season he had with the talent he had around him. Where the reason I don't have him on my top 100 is because yes, he did pretty well with the dumpster fire last year, but it's an even. They now took the dumpster fire and lit it with gasoline, then lit it on fire. That's basically what's happened in Jacksonville. He doesn't seem like he wants to play there. He doesn't look like he wants to be there. And just running backs in general. Once you start, you really can't have a diva running back because the NFL does not value the running back position right now. I'm just seeing. I think we could see a drop off from him. Raw talent, I think he is definitely where you have him at. But just coming into 2020, 2021 season, I'm not sure we're going to see that from him. I think Jacksonville, it's more about where he's at than the player he actually is.
No, I completely agree. And, if I was projecting towards 2020, he definitely would not be on the list. I don't want people to confuse that because he just has such a lack of weapons around him. You can already debate if he would have been on a top 100 performers of 2019 list. I don't think that he would have been, personally, honestly, just based off his yard totals and really what he was doing on a per carry basis. The problem that I have is, one stat that I found in the lead up to that video is that he was, of all starting running backs, he was facing eight plus defender boxes at the second highest rate of anybody in the league, second to only Derrick Henry, and we know where he's going to be on these lists. He's going to be much higher, and for a reason. But the problem is that Leonard Fournette, he doesn't have the Taylor Lewans of the world or the Jack Conklins or even the AJ Browns that are around him and able to kind of dominate guys at the line of scrimmage and make plays downfield. Fournette just doesn't have that. So no, in terms of projecting or reviewing, I don't think he'd be on either list. But if we're just talking talent, regardless of your situation, that's why I have him there. I think that the Godwin, you hit the nail on the head. He has Mike Evans. He had a quarterback too that was just willing to throw the ball aimlessly. He would throw 3 interceptions and he would still be chucking deep balls. And to act like Godwin's not kind of a beneficiary of that, to me it's just a little bit naive. And maybe you can say that this list that I have is a little bit biased towards veterans, just a tad. But to me, I have a lot more confidence in a guy like Keenan Allen, for example, who I've seen put up 3 straight, basically 1,200 plus yard seasons, than I do in Godwin after his just one season over 800 yards for the first time. You know what I mean? So I'm going to value that consistency without having seen any regression over just one kind of splash season when we do have film of Godwin not being that effective, So that's why I have him at 87, even though I do think that, he has potential to climb up the list for sure, but he's got to prove it to me first. He's not just going to get it off 1 year. And, kind of like the guys who have got it off 1 year, like the Josh Jacobs, he's in this similar range. And, that's why I have Godwin where I do. Jalen Smith's a really interesting one because even though this seems low for him, he's the 6th highest inside linebacker I have on the list. So, and all those 5 other guys have been all pros in the past 2 to 3 years. So I don't really think that you can say anything about that. He's obviously one of my favorite and to me just one of the brightest and best young players in the NFL. And then Dalvin's an interesting one because talent-wise, if he's healthy, this man's probably a top 50 player. He's probably a top 3, 4, 5 running back in the league. But the problem is, he's only played 28 of the 48 games that he's been available to play since he's been drafted, So if you can't stay on the field, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. So that's why you might think that he's a little bit lower than someone would have on their list. But other than that, no, I agree with you for the most part. I think that Fournette was probably the name that had people scratching their heads the most. But then the others, once you kind of understand the criteria that I'm grading on, they should kind of fall right in line.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to get into your next 5 because the next 5 has a name I absolutely disagree with full-heartedly. Jadeveon Clowney on this list is ridiculous. So if you want to knock Dalvin for health, then you basically have to take Clowney off this list for health and even forget health. Even when he's on the field, he's not productive. And I understand that it's not all about stats and just splash plays, but like his pressures are above average. He's pretty good in one game. But
no, Mike. See, that's the problem. So last year he played 13 games and he had 41 hurries. That's more than Everson Griffin in a full 16. So, what are we going to do with that? He's had over, even though you say he's only played so many games, he's had over 35 QB hurries in each of the past 3 years with that limited amount of games, and against the run, man, once you put on the film, he's just one of the most dominant guys in the league. So I can see why you'd initially be like, oh, he's not even signed to a team and he has to stay healthy. But this dude, when he is healthy, to me, he's an absolute force. And I could see why you'd put him maybe a little bit lower, but I can't take him off the list. No way.
Hold on, maybe I'll take the PFF side on this a little bit. Obviously, stats they're not the end all be all, but you got to have stats, man. If you look at Clowney's 3 sacks last year, and then previous years, has he broke double digits more in one season? I don't think so. For a top 100 player in 81 with injury concerns, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous, like the contract he's trying to get. I think everything about him is ridiculous. I think he's an overrated player. I think he's a good player. He could be great. He's not great.
Oh, sad to disagree. I think he's an elite player. I mean, I think most of these guys on the list are elite personally. But so he's at a season of 9 sacks, a season of 9.5 sacks. But to me, ultimately, like if we're just looking at pure sacks, we're just grading the result, not the process. I'm more interested in guys who are going to beat their blocks on a higher percentage of plays, and that's why I'm going to put Clowney on there, even though he might not be playing near as many games this season as a guy like Everson Griffen. You know, it's basically to me the same argument for Clowney that is for Trey Flowers. You have a guy who's incredibly balanced, great against the run, and really solid against the pass. And you know, even though he might not get the sack numbers that Everson Griffen might or Brandon Graham might, his actual production is higher, and that's why I have those two guys higher than the Grahams and Griffins, even though that kind of goes against conventional wisdom. But that's just my side.
Yeah, but they actually play him. But we'll get off that. Agree to disagree. I think Amari Cooper, I think that's a great spot for him. I think I am right around the same spot. I think for the kind of player he is, for the team he is, and I think he might even look better next year. Obviously, with CeeDee Lamb being added to that offense, Gallup getting another year, I think it's only going to improve Amari Cooper. That whole offense, as we talked, if you guys watched the Cowboys team recap video, we're both on the Cowboys bandwagon. I think it actually, if you look at on the actual lineup that they're putting out there, I think it's the team that's going to compete for a Super Bowl. Deshaun Watson. You could get some hate for that one. You're going to get some hate for not having Deshaun Watson higher on this list. And me and you are in the same spot. Everyone wants to look – obviously the quarterback position is the most valuable position in the NFL. But does that sometimes take away from the actual talent of the quarterback at hand? Yes. And that's why so many of these lists have so many quarterbacks in the top 50, top 20, when it's not even based off the players. It's based off the players' value to the team, but not even how they are relative to their position. And I think that's a problem. I think we need to sometimes, slow our boats on that. Yes, they are the most valuable position, but talent-wise, just based off of what they do at their position, even just look historically, is Deshaun Watson that special? Not really.
No, and with Deshaun, what's really interesting is if you look at the NFL's list from last season, for example, they have him at 51 or 52, I believe, but that's QB 11. Like, that's much more disrespectful than me saying he's number 80 and QB 7. I just think we need to realize that my list is not skewed towards positional value. I'm not skewing it towards playmakers. There's going to be guys that seem higher than they should be just because you're not accustomed to seeing, 11 offensive linemen higher than him, for example, and that's the problem because people seem to say these lists are just who are the top performers, but then they're only doing it at certain positions. For example, I believe the NFL's list last year had over 20 receivers. Like that's kind of a problem, even though those are the guys that are going to get you views and those are the guys that people know because they're on their fantasy teams. That's not a real list to me, and that's why you have him at 80 when I do think that if we're just talking quarterbacks, he's actually QB 7.
Yeah, and I want to make 2 points. I think so much football is just stats and what you see on ESPN skewed and fantasy football skewed. I think this league is obviously going offense. There is an offense skew, but I think fantasy football doesn't help that with the fan base. I think, man, so many people, they overrate, Christian McCaffrey. He should be a top 5 player. He's my number 1 pick in fantasy football. He should be the best player there. That's not true. It's just because that's what he's a stat machine. That doesn't mean that he is a top 5 player. And I think so many people probably think that way, and I think it's wrong. And another thing I'd like to mention. So if you're looking at not a fantasy draft, a football draft, you had probably Deshaun Watson and maybe the next 20 players on this list. Deshaun Watson's probably going a lot earlier if you're just looking for your football team. Purely on the standpoint, he is a quarterback. You need a quarterback. The value is there. Joe Burrow was not the best player in this year's draft, but he went one because he's at a position of value. And for a team that that's where I think it's so much skewed is obviously you probably have Deshaun Watson over other players on this list or people that are going to be above him than maybe a center, but just off actual talent-wise, he's not better than the center. Maybe someone like Rodney Hudson is at his position.
No, the thing is, like, people don't want to look at that. Like, how are they relative to the average quarterback, for example? I think there's a much tighter gap between Deshaun Watson and the average quarterback than there is between Rodney Hudson and the average center. So who does what they do better? Rodney Hudson. And that's why Rodney Hudson and a lot of guys are going to be higher on this list than you probably expect. And in terms of the redraft point, that's actually a really interesting thing for you to bring up, because I actually had a comment by one of the one Raider fan the other day that said, like, oh, in a redraft, a 1,500 player redraft, don't you think Josh Jacobs would go in the 60s? Like, how can you have him in the 90s? Well, no. First of all, that's not what this list is. That's not what this list is gauging. But no, absolutely not. You would have 20 quarterbacks going first just because of the sheer value of the position. So, no, I might have Deshaun Watson 80, but in reality, in a redraft, he's going top 6, 7. And, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's just we're looking at it from a different lens, And in regards to Jacobs, I don't think he would be top 150. But
I'm with you there.
And then the only other question I wanted to ask you is, so if you had anybody from this list that going forward or to next year maybe that you don't think will be on this list, who do you think it is in terms of dropping back? And if you had to guess one guy that's going to jump up, who do you think that it would be?
I think the one name that's jumping down is Jadeveon Clowney. You shouldn't be on the list in the first place. I'm just messing with you. I'll touch base on that in a minute. But I think Demario Davis. I think age being a factor. I think this is a one-year run for the Saints. I think they got 1 year left to really put in that kind of Super Bowl competitive team. I think they're there this year. Obviously, as I said about the Cowboys, we said the same thing about the Saints. I think those are probably our two favorite teams in the NFC. You can tell me if yours is different, but those are probably my two favorite teams. And I think Demario Davis really is the leader of that defense, and I think the talent is there this year. So I think this is his year, but just based off age, I think next year, I think we're going to see a step back from him. Some of those players, there's going to be plenty of free agents on that Saints team. The talent is going to go down. The talent level is going to go down next year. I don't think there's any question about it. And I just think it's a player that you're going to see take a step back. Maybe not this upcoming season, but 2 seasons from now. A player I think should maybe take a step up. I think two ones that really stick out to me. I think one of them are Josh Jacobs or Kenny Golladay. I'll be the home. I think Kenny Golladay. I really think we're going to see a lot from the Lions offense. I think the question about the Lions is that defense really going to perform? I can at least just hold off enough to keep this offense in the game. I think Kenny Golladay, you could see a huge year, especially if Matt Stafford's back for a full season. You add DeAndre Swift to that running game. I think that'll just help open up Kenny, hopefully deep and hopefully for a lot of touchdowns. So just maybe a little bit of homer in me, but that's a guy I think we could see a huge step up from next year.
No, and honestly, I completely agree with you on really both of those. I think that Demario, looking at him right now today, he's 31 years old, but, he's going to be turning 32 in this season. So if we were really starting to project and look at things for next year or the year after that, how many linebackers, especially middle linebackers, can you think of that have really excelled and continued to play at this kind of top 100 or elite level into their, mid-30s? It rarely ever happens. Most linebackers, they kind of peak around 26, 27. They're able to sustain that to about 30. I already think he's an anomaly in the first place, so I wouldn't be shocked if he starts to fall back. But then Golladay, I actually think that Golladay has the most room to improve out of anybody on this list. When making his video, it was really interesting because it's like there's only very few things that he actually does well right now, but he does them at an insanely high level, But, like, if this man is able to if he's able to kind of address that blind spot in his game and become a better route runner, have cleaner releases off the line of scrimmage, I think that this man could see drastic improvement next year. And, it's not even just because you're getting Matt Stafford healthy. I just think it's because – he's going to get another year of work. And from what we've seen so far, he seems like a guy that's working on constantly refining his craft and improving. And I think that, with him having such a huge blind spot in his game right now, because he really was not an even above average route runner, in my opinion. He was just winning these kind of catches off of just sheer ability. He actually got the least amount of separation on his receptions of anybody in the entire NFL. He only averaged 1.9 yards. And, when you're talking about over 100 qualified receivers, that's something. If he can clean that up, if he can even get to 2.5 yards of separation, I think that he could be in line to become really the first top 50 line we've seen in quite a time,
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think two other names that kind of stick out to me. I think Chris Godwin. I think we could see another good year from him, and I think maybe not on your list, maybe just talent wise, but if he could put a consistent year together with Tom Brady, do the same thing with the stats, I think you'd have to put him up a little bit higher than he is, even though it still might be just a product of environment. But man, sometimes you have to like how much of Brady was product of environment. How much there's so many players you can argue with the product of environment that like eventually you can't really take that away from them. So I think that's a guy, and then Jalen Smith. I think he's going to get a lot of primetime games, and if he can make big plays, a lot of people's list, he could fly up the boards.
No, I think Jalen's another one on my list that is ready to prime to fly up as well, especially considering what he's already shown. And again, he is only 25 right now. He just turned 25 on June 14th. I mentioned that in my video. Happy belated birthday to Jalen. But my man, if this is just an appetizer, what we're seeing right now, then we're in for an absolutely scary transformation. And I actually wouldn't be shocked if, I think I mentioned it in the video, I wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about Jalen Smith being a top 10 to 20 guy in 2 to 3 years here. That's how much I think he can grow. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's almost the next Bobby Wagner, honestly. But I just think right now, I think I'm putting him at 86. But no, if we were projecting a year, 2, 3 years in the future, this man to me is definitely going to be top 25 at the bare minimum.
Yeah, for sure. And I think two names for this upcoming season are going to be huge for him. Dontari Poe, Gerald McCoy. I think adding those two interior defensive linemen just trash cans. They just eat up space. A player like Jalen Smith with that athleticism is going to flourish behind those two players. I think those are going to be maybe those two D linemen won't really show up on the stat sheet, but they'll show up on Jalen Smith's stat sheet. I think that's what we're going to see this year.
No, and I wouldn't even be shocked if kind of with that, as long as Leighton Vander Esch can stay healthy, I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of reappears on these types of lists as well. Because, for him, he already flashed some greatness along with Jalen, but it seems like Jalen's kind of stole the spotlight a little bit because he has been able to stay healthy. I wouldn't be shocked if Leighton, he finds himself back on a list like this as well as he continues to improve. But with that being said, are you ready to hop into your list now?
Let's get into it. The better half. You got to save the best for last. So, how do you want to do this? You want me to do the five by five?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what are some of your thoughts on my first five?
Obviously, great spot for Tyler Lockett, first of all. And then, kind of going from there, I would say DeMario's a little bit low just because he was a first-team All-Pro last year. Obviously, I thought he was more in the 80s. But, again, these guys are so tightly packed. And if you are projecting towards the future at all, I totally get it, being that he's going to be 32 this upcoming season. These next two are really interesting, though, to me, the Hicks brothers. Obviously, Akeem, he was out a little bit last year, but we saw just the impact that he brings to Chicago when he's healthy. I think that, if he can put another year together like he did in 2018, he's definitely deserving of being on a list like this. The next one, I'll be honest, I had Jordan Hicks on my list initially, but as I kind of really dove into the film, I had to put him below the Deion Jones and Anthony Barrs of the world, just because, even though his statistics are off the charts better, I think that a lot of those plays that he's making are kind of at his own admission, if that makes sense, in which he'll be targeted in coverage, light up a reception, and then bring him down for a tackle. So some of his stats are just a little bit empty, not to the point that he would be outside like my top 110, but I just wouldn't have him in the top 100. And obviously, you already know how I think about Everson Griffin. So, do you have anything that you want to talk about there with those first five?
Yeah, I'll talk about the Hicks brothers. I think kind of my thought process behind them. I think Akeem Hicks, I think me and you, one of our favorite positions to evaluate every year is D tackle, and especially with that, kind of that three tech, that one gap penetrating D tackle, and working with a player like Khalil Mack. I think that's huge. So I think when you put a single team on Akeem Hicks, I think he eats. He gets pressure. He gets to the quarterback. And I think some of that's just being where he is and the players he's playing with. And I think also if you look at the Bears linebacking core, I think also having a space heater like Hicks, I think helps a lot there too. So I think he's all around just a solid player. And I think that those five, I'm looking just for solid players that do kind of just a lot for their team, but maybe just they're not special. Maybe I'd say they're good players. They're maybe teetering almost to the great, but they're not quite there, and they probably won't be there. Hicks he's kind of a do-it-all linebacker, and I love that. I think something that maybe doesn't show up on film or kind of like in helping and stuffing the run is he is great in pass coverage. If you see the interception numbers, he's kind of your modern-day linebacker. I think I like that. And I also like just being that second line of defense. I think he's kind of just maybe it's a little bit biased because obviously Barr's a little bit bigger. He's going to fill a gap. He's maybe probably making more proactive plays. Hicks is probably a little bit more reactive and a little bit slower on the reactive, if that. But he makes the plays. He's a ball hawk at the linebacker position, and I think I respect that from him.
No, I actually do agree with what you said about Akeem Hicks. You know, a lot of people kind of look at him and think that he's a product of Khalil Mack. Well, I just pulled up his stats real quick, and you know, between 2016 and 2018, he had 7, 8.5, and 7.5 sacks with 54, 54, and 55 tackles. So when this man is healthy, he is one of the most consistent guys in that defensive tackle role. The only problem is coming off a year now where it was kind of riddled with injuries. I don't really know if I would put him at the back end of my top 100, but instead like just outside to where another consistent season, he's definitely back in. But until we see that, then I'm going to keep him out. And you know, I guess we can transition to the next 5. You can kind of say the same thing for Kawann Short, right? I mean, I had him just outside my top 100 as well. Again, just because of the injuries, and now we're a year removed from seeing, you know, what Kawann is able to do. And I especially think now, though, when you add Yeturgos Matos and Derek Brown, it's going to be an explosive year for him because, you know, that's now an elite front. It's an elite front 4, I would say. At least it will be in short time. And Kawann Short, that's just going to help him out a ton. And, you know, obviously, you guys know my thoughts on Kevin Byard, Kenny Galladay, Zach Ertz. Byard.
It's Byard. It's cool. Titans fans, comment, please.
Yeah,
you won't delete them. I won't let them.
I'm going to keep saying Byard. Obviously, I touched on those guys in their own videos, but Jonathan Allen was a really interesting one because, you know, both of our favorite guys coming out of Alabama. The man, he has really top 50 potential in my eyes. The only problem is that, you know, it's tough to kind of evaluate him when he's been in a rough situation in Washington, you know? So I wouldn't be shocked if he got drafted to Philadelphia, let's say, you know, if he was playing alongside Fletcher Cox, I wouldn't be shocked if people thought that this guy was top 50 already, but instead he's in Washington. And that's kind of the problem with these lists when guys have only been on one team is that, you know, you're kind of stuck evaluating them in the situation that they're in. So other than that, I mean, Jair is great. He's another fringe guy for me where I think that next year, after another year of really being now, I guess, the top cornerback in the NFC North, I think that, you know, that could propel him on the list for sure. But I don't really have a problem with him at 90.
Yeah, I think something I'm just going to say about my list, probably not my whole list, but especially this back end, I think I'm doing a little bit more projection and like what we're going to see. Hopefully this next year, these players take the next step where you will still probably have that vet bias. I think as you get into probably my top 50, top 60, I'm not looking at my list right now, but I think we both have probably a more veteran bias. We know what we're getting from these players. But on this back end, I think I want a little bit more projection. Like, I think these players are going to break into the top 100 players. I think we're going to see something from these individuals that we haven't necessarily seen before. I think Jonathan Allen's a perfect example. Obviously, you have Daron Payne getting another year. They had that pick this year, Chase Young? Yeah, that should help a little bit with Jonathan Allen. Kerrigan, and they have plethora of depth on that D-line as well. I think it's only going to help Jonathan Allen. I think – obviously, they don't have the back-end talent or any offensive talent, but just purely Jonathan Allen standpoint, I think that front 4 is nasty, and I think Jonathan Allen's really going to show up, and I think he might show up on the stat sheet, which hopefully will get him a little bit recognized because I'm going to say that like on your list, Brandon Graham wouldn't get recognition if he played for the Cleveland Browns. He gets recognition because he played for a playoff team, and that's why maybe you see on film people – just watching games will see Eagles games. They watch Eagles games. People don't watch, well, they are starting to watch Brown games, but say Bengals games. People don't watch Bengals games, but they will watch Eagles games. That's why sometimes he'll show up on the film when you're necessarily not actually, like, he's not showing up in the stat sheet.
No, I agree with that. I think, you know, the only thing that I would counter back to you saying the Redskins have no offensive talent, dude, if any Redskins fans watch this video, they're going to freak out because they think Terry McLaurin should be on these top 100 lists. So, no, but everything else that you said, I completely agree with. And, I mean, are you ready to get to those next 5?
Let's start it off talking about, you know, Redskins offensive talent. Let's right at 89.
Well, you know, honestly, with Scherf, I'm not sure how long he's going to be in Washington, to be completely honest. I know one thing that I talked about in my video was just his effort, and that's what kept him, in my opinion, from getting higher on the list because, man, he would make some lazy plays where he would just get hands-on, displace his guy, make a great block, no doubt, right? But then after the play kind of got past him, my man would just watch the play. He would just chill back like he like it was a Saturday afternoon and he was watching college football on his couch or something. He was just enjoying the view. And I don't really like that because I want to have players that are going to hustle and potentially keep making plays. Where Scherf was more of the, all right, I did my job. Now let's see you do it, AP. And the problem is the AP is not going to do that unless he has guys helping him. So that's why I kept Scherf a little bit lower, but 89 is fine. And then obviously Godwin, Watson, Jacobs. We already talked about those guys. Really the only one that I wanted to mention here is Bradley Chubb. He's kind of like right there with Jonathan Allen in terms of guys that again he was my highest rated player in his draft class. I think that potential through the roof. Again, the only problem is the injury last year, but I'm so excited to see what he can do now with Von Miller, Jarrell Casey. You had AJ Boye, you have Justin Simmons. It's a really, really special defense that they're getting there in Denver. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I'll start with Chubb. We obviously couldn't really see what he had in that second season with the injury, but if you saw year one, man, he came out and was swinging. And he didn't have a player like Jarrell Casey on the interior, but he did have Von Miller. So I think learning from a player like Von Miller, being able to just and probably enjoy that single team. People are putting two people Von Miller's way. He's just going to eat, and I think we're going to see a lot from him. And I think we should see an improved Broncos team in general. I think this offense might be fun. And I think that gives the defense time off the field, and hopefully that equates to more actual production when they are on the field. With the Watson, I think I'd be very interested to see what we see without DeAndre Hopkins, because you're going to need to see a step up from Deshaun Watson. He's got to put the team on his back, in all honesty. He really is going to have to be the team. And I'm not sure he can do it. So I think this is maybe a little projection of what we're going to see next year. I think we see a step back from the Texans in general. And I think in just kind of with all that, Deshaun Watson's going to take a step back. So I think it's all just kind of a full picture with me. I am doing a little bit of projection to what we're going to see next year. So after, the next season's over, we probably should do like a reevaluation on this list and see if we were wrong, right? Because I'd be interested to see where Watson is. And I think me and you we're probably going to be right around this 80 mark. And then I think Godwin, we already talked about it, the argument. We're right in the same spot, and same with Jacobs. I think we're right. We're so close, there's no reason to really talk about it again.
No, I completely agree. I think that all those guys are within maybe 5 or 6 spots of where I had him on my list. So I can't really hate it. The only guy that I thought was interesting was Chubb, but again, the man had 12 sacks his rookie year, and now the situation around him has improved. If this was just going to be projecting the top performers of 2020, I wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy who's even maybe 20 spots higher on this list. Honestly, just because of, as you said, taking on single teams. As long as he's recovered from that injury, we got big things coming ahead with Bradley Chubb.
And let's move on to this next five. Mike, why is Jadeveon Clowney on my list? What are you doing? Why do we let you edit? I need the editing privileges here. This is ridiculous. He was never on the list. Get him out of there.
I think you actually did have him on the list. There's no way that I messed that up.
No, you messed it up. That might have been on our joint list because you argued for it. And obviously I don't have so much control. I don't even have the mouse when making the list. But no way did Jadeveon Clowney make my list. He's higher than – he's one pick higher. Why would I move him one pick higher? I wanted to move him 10 picks lower.
Talk about the other 4, and I'm going to see who you had on the list, all right?
I appreciate it. I think it's a lot of the same players you had on your list. I think the one that's different is Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz showed a lot last year. Obviously, with the offense basically just falling apart next to him, he kept the team in it every game. Obviously, if he didn't have that ACL tear 2 years ago, he'd be an MVP. He already have an MVP on his belt. And I don't think there's any denying that, in all honesty. So I think that Carson Wentz, I think we should see a lot from them. We really liked the Eagles team as a whole. We should see some nice production from him. I'm really excited to see him this year. He could even be higher. I think, obviously, with that quarterback bias, he could be higher on some people's lists, but he's probably below Watson on most people's lists. I think there's an argument to be had there. So, Mike, I think you have the same thing. You have Wentz over Watson. So maybe some of your thoughts on having those two players, having Watson below Wentz.
Well, I don't want to spoil Wentz, and I do want to address the Clowney thing because I I apologize, Mike. I pulled it up. You're not going to be able to see that. But you actually had Yannick Ngakoue 80, okay? I guess I did mess up there. But, everybody makes a mistake. And, in regards to Wentz and Watson, I don't think that that's a mistake. I don't think Wentz and Watson's a mistake because here's the thing, right? We've seen Carson Wentz play at an MVP level. We've seen him. He kind of had the MVP stolen from him just because he got injured late in the year a couple years ago, right? Well, we haven't seen that yet from Deshaun Watson. So even though they're pretty close, I can't put Watson over Wentz until we see that out of Watson, And I know a lot of people they want to talk about Watson having a better year last year. Well, when you consider the situations and you realize that Carson Wentz was throwing to Greg Ward, a converted quarterback at one point last year, like man, he had a real dumpster fire around him at that receiver position once Alshon and Djax went out. So whereas Watson had, he had DeAndre Hopkins, he had Will Fuller, Kenny Stills, all those guys. So that's why I have Wentz over Watson. But again, it's such a tight race that I could really hear either side. But personally, I'm more of a Wentz guy.
Yeah, and I think especially last year, I think it was an interesting argument because Wentz had an elite offensive line. Deshaun Watson had an elite weapon, and you really only need that one weapon. And then he had better kind of complementary pieces to that. So I think it's interesting. This year, we already have Brandon Brooks going down. I think that's he's out for the season. That's kind of a sad thing to see. You have Jason Peters. He's gone out of there. So I think that offensive line is going to take a step back for the Eagles. Deshaun Watson, I don't think there's anything needs to be said. DeAndre Hopkins isn't there anymore. He doesn't have an elite receiving group. So I think there's the comparison this next upcoming season, I think, is pretty even. I think you really can look at them side to side next year and see what the production is and how they perform. I think previously it was just interesting. It was hard to compare because they were in two very different situations having to do with two very different things.
No, I agree with that. But I do just think, though, that from a sheer talent perspective, like if we put Wentz in Houston and if we put Watson in Philadelphia, at least this past season, I think that Houston becomes a potential Super Bowl team in the AFC. I think that the Eagles, they probably miss out on the playoffs to the Cowboys. And, considering they almost did with Wentz, that's not saying a huge drop-off, but I do just think that there's that slight drop-off there. Other than that, I mean, one thing I do want to note is that you don't have Amari Cooper in this first 20, right? I had him at 84. You have him actually ahead of Keenan Allen. So what do you think you see between Cooper versus Allen in regards to Allen, at 81 opposed to on my list right it flipped?
Yeah, I think the first thing is going to be in order to be a receiver and make receptions, you need someone throwing it to you. I think the whole Dak Prescott is better than whatever the Chargers put out there next upcoming season. And there's rapport with Dak Prescott and Amari. There's that trust built, and that you can't really speak enough to that. It's almost like it's like a second nature sometimes. And I think Amari and Dak are there. And Keenan's not. He just isn't with Tyrod Taylor or Herbert. It's not a shot at Allen. I just think it's a lot of it's just where he's at as a whole. And I just think just talent-wise, I think Cooper is just a little bit more athletic. He's just a little bit more talented as a whole. I think Keenan Allen's he's just productive, man. He's just always there. You really can't count the man out. Like obviously, I think he loves playing against the Lions because man, he has some big games. He'll have like 100. What was it last season or 2 seasons ago where he had like 10 receptions, 170 yards, man. He's just a pest, and that's what I say about Keenan Allen is he's that guy, man. You just don't want to go up against. He just kind of beats you like play by play. Maybe it's not necessarily just a big play right off the top, like Amari Cooper maybe has that ability, but man, it's just that reception catches for 12 yards, 15 yards. Then it'll kind of break for the larger play. It's kind of what you see in Keenan Allen. So I just think there's a little bit more talent with Amari Cooper. I think next year with the Cowboys, I think it's just a better situation in general. But I think it's a really close comparison.
No, and when you say that Amari Cooper's a better athlete, so for people watching this in a couple of days after we're recording this, because I'm a couple of days behind in terms of posting videos. This is going to come out after 80, but we're making it prior to 84 being posted. So Mike, what do you think Keenan Allen ran for his 40-yard dash when he was coming out for the draft? This number completely shocked me.
I'd say 4.51.
You're in a 4.71. That's why to me, actually, he was more impressive than Amari on film because he doesn't have those physical gifts. I would say not the entirety, but the large majority of his wins were just with his mind and his ability to beat you at that chess match. And that's what you saw with Darius Slay. When Darius Slay was following him all around the field, into the slot, on the outside, Keenan Allen was just doing such a great job of selling him on every route that he wasn't running. If he's running a slant, he's taking a hop step and a jab step to the outside, and Darius Slay is bailing that way, and then Keenan Allen busted underneath. And it was just so impressive to really go back through and watch all of his targets. But again, it is just kind of the difference of our list, because where I'm trying to isolate their talents and compare them on a level playing field, you are more projecting. And I definitely agree. If we were just talking about who will have better numbers in 2020, I for sure think it is Amari with that rapport he has with Dak and that solid offense he's in. But other than that, I guess, do you want to talk about Yannick now? I should probably go back and edit that. But what were your thoughts on Yannick at 80?
Yeah, let's talk about Yannick, and it has to be it basically has to be to put him on this list, and especially at 80, it has to be some projection because he's not going to play for the Jacksonville Jaguars next year, or if he does play, it's going to be a half-ass effort. I don't think there's any denying that. So he's going to have to be in a different position. But I'll talk about what he has done already. He's been basically the level of consistency with the Jaguars since he came in the league. He's just athletic. He's twitchy. He gets to the quarterback. He gets the pressures. And sometimes you even question how he's getting there. Like, he's just not – he's never played – he's played with good talent. Obviously, Calais Campbell. He's actually had some pretty decent talent to play with him. But I just think just the level of consistency coming out of college and at a position of and obviously it's a huge impact, defensive end. He gets the pressures. I think all around he's just a solid player, and he's done it since he's been in the league. So I think just that speaks so much. But I think if he's going to live up to that 80 spot, I think he needs to be put in a good position. I think or if he even leaves his position, I think he needs to leave the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know how that situation – it's an ugly situation to say the least. But he needs to be traded. And I think if he ends up in – it's hard because the teams that are maybe willing up to give that capital, I don't know if any of them are really. I think it's a really odd league this year. Are really any teams going to be willing up to give up that top-end draft capital to get a player like Yannick? Because as much as, man, he's productive, he's consistent, but it's maybe not – he's not on Von Miller's level. He's not to that extent. Or even Nick Bosa. Like, I think Nick Bosa, like, you would trade up for some heavy capital to get a player like that. He's not there. He's definitely 2 tiers behind that. But he's probably the top of that second tier for me.
So Yannick was a guy who was kind of a victim to really just the talent that he did play with on my list. I had him right on like 102. But, again, it's just because ever since he's entered the league, he's had Calais Campbell with him. I really, before I put him on this list, I need to see what he does without having that dominant force who's taking on double teams. And, I really want to see him as the focal point on a D-line because, like you said, he has been a model of consistency among young players. 37.5 sacks over 4 years. That's great stuff, especially considering where the Jags picked him. But I completely agree with what you said, though, in terms of I don't know who's going to give up a bunch of draft capital for him when we have teams that are unwilling to give up just straight salary cap to guys like Everson, Jadeveon, Ziggy Ansah, guys like that. So I'm not really sure if maybe Yannick is moved, it'll be a deadline move opposed to something that happens soon. And unfortunately, I think that, just playing that half season in Jacksonville, I think you're going to see him take a step back just from a production standpoint, which to me suggests that it was more so playing with Calais than anything else.
Yeah, I'm going more of the effort with it. I don't think he wants to play for Jacksonville. So if he's stuck on that team, I just don't think you're going to get the best of Yannick. But I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, a little bit of both. So I think it's interesting. Probably re-looking at it might be a little too early. Probably should put Jadeveon Clowney there. Just messing. But no, I think it's a little bit of projection. But I think I went with projection. So I'm just going to keep going with it. We're going to keep it going. Probably would have been a little bit lower if I were to re-look at this after kind of having this conversation about it.
I know if you guys enjoyed a little bit of the both of us, make sure you are not only liking and commenting, but also, and more importantly, subscribing, because not only do we have more of the individual top 100 videos coming out. We have more of these longer form videos as well. So if you guys did enjoy something like this, something you can kick back and listen to as we talk about really the bottom 20 of our top 100 list, just let us know in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to keep bringing this series on a regular basis. But Mike, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I just think just keep watching this top 100 list, man. They've been some real quality videos if you guys have been watching them. In your comments, Savage, that BR comments, I know he might not have liked them. Keep them coming, man. If you have something like that, keep saying it, man. It's funny. As long as you're in good spirits, that's all we care. And if you're a PFF lover, just watch the videos. Listen. Just listen to the video. He literally addresses it.
No, but I think one of the problems is that people they are like super fans of some of these guys, you know. So it's like you see Josh Jacobs at 91, and then you get entrenched in that belief. But in reality, you just don't want to hear and kind of understand what my criteria is, because I think that if you did, you know, if you listen to me saying, you know, this isn't a 2019 top performers list, or I'm not projecting, and you know, just click the link in the description to hear what my criteria explained, then I think that you would kind of understand that. But a lot of people, they don't really want to do that. So I'm glad that hopefully there are some who have, and I think that those are the people who've been enjoying this series so far. But yeah, other than that, I really don't have much else to say, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to say we enjoy your comments. We love debate. That's what we're here for. We debate. Obviously, he thinks Jadeveon Clowney's a decent human being and a player, and I would totally disagree with that. I'm just kidding. Jadeveon Clowney probably is a decent human being. But, like, we are up for debate. So as long as you're willing to do it in a kind, heartfelt way, we're willing here to debate. So I think we mic'd up, and I think we mic'ing out. Deuces.
And watch my Jadeveon Clowney video, Mike, because obviously you haven't yet. He's gonna be a top 80 player on your list. All right, peace, guys.